Another tool we use to influence people other than reference points is something called framing. And that's the way you present a challenge affects how people will look at it, even though the value of it rationally is exactly the same. An example of that is what's called the game frame. I'm going to give you $10,000. Or you could take that $10,000 and I'll flip a coin. If it comes up heads, you'll get $20,000. If it comes up tails, you get 0. Well, most people will pick option A. They'll pick the sure thing. Keep the money. Now a loss frame, I'm going to lay 10,000 people off, but I'm going to do the same proposition. I'm going to flip a coin, and if it comes up tails, then 20,000 people are going to be out of work. On the other hand, if it comes up heads, then nobody's going to lose their job. Well, people are more likely to take D. And the reason why is to avoid loss, we're willing to take risks. To ensure gain, we're going to avoid risk. And so that kind of makes sense, because if they have exactly the same value, the losses are worth 3 times more than gain. So we're willing to take more risks. However, here's an example also of framing. Exactly the same value. Supposing I'm selling a computer with customer support. Well, saying it's $800 from the computer and $200 for the support versus it's $1,000 for computer and support versus $800 for just the computer. The $1,000 sets in my mind a higher reference point, and so I think it's more expensive when it's actually same cost. Again, different value, different perception. Another big issue in these framing issues are what are the stakes? And those stakes are, what if we do the coin flip thing again, but it's $1? Well, because it's only $1, it's like, yeah, what the heck, I'll take a shot at it, flip a coin. Let's see if we get $2. Now, on the other hand, it's exactly the opposite with taking risks. If the risks are relatively low and the damage isn't that high, then we'll just take what's given to us. And so what happens is your stakes impact whether you're going to seek risk or you're going to avoid it. And so here's a summary of it, that in terms of reducing loss, if the stakes are small, then we're going to pass on the proposition. But if the stakes are big or medium, we're going to take a chance. And it's exactly the opposite with gain. And so here are some examples. Should I buy or not buy? And so in case number 1, 25% off of all my costs. Wow, that's a lot of money, but it costs $50 million. Again, high value. Because it's a high value, I'm not going to take the risk of instituting it, even though I can get a high gain. Number 2, what would you guess? Yeah, you guess you take a shot at it, and that's because, for $2.99, what the heck, I'm not risking that much. So I'll take a risk trying to get a gain. Number 3, the $19.99 isn't terrible, but if I have a problem with spills, I'm willing to do it because I want to reduce the amount of damage. So it's looking like this is something negative. I want to reduce pain. And for number 4, as you could pretty much guess, if I'm 53 years old. Now, of course, I'm going to look at this much differently if I'm 23 years old because I don't make that much money versus I'm 53. And not only that, this is why older people become more frightened of the world because they're older and they know they don't have that much time. So time frame makes an effect. In terms of marketing, reference pricing, mental accounting, and status quo effects are examples of bounded rationalities that affect the way we do things. For example, reference pricing. We show markdowns. Price increases create the most emotional effect when it comes to marketing. We get pissed off at it. That's why Netflix, when they raised their rates by $2 a month, lost 800,000 subscribers. Freemium has a paradox, and that's that you're setting the reference price at 0, and this is why the percentage of people who follow you tend to be a lot less. Rebates are very effective, and that's because they're not viewed as reduction, but they're viewed as gain. And because that gain has virtually no risk associated with it, we tend to think it has a lot more value than it really does. And this is why so many electronics products have rebates. And actually only 20 to 30% of you turn them in. Not Dr. Cho. I'm rational. I want my money. The other thing people tend to do is bin their money. And so if you have a product that's geared towards a very specific area, such as vacations or something like that. Now, supposing you had a very strict budget and you told yourself, I'm only going to buy one double vanilla latte per day. Well, case one is you've paid for the latte, you haven't drank any, and you slip and splat, you don't get any. In case two, you're in the coffee house, you pull the money out of your wallet, a wing comes up, and you lose the $6. Do you still buy the latte? People will do something in different situations. In case one, the mentality is, well, I bought the latte. And even though the loss is exactly the same, the situation is exactly the same, just the background conditions are different. In case one, you won't get a new latte because you feel like, well, I bought it and I didn't get any, so I made the transaction. In case two, you'll make the excuse, well, I never got my latte, so I can go ahead and buy it. And that's called mental accounting. Status quo is one of the biggest problems for entrepreneurs because we're talking about what happens when we have risk. What are we going to do? We're going to embrace status quo. We're not going to take that chance. And so, however, there are different groups that will embrace risk and different groups that won't embrace risk. And so teenagers, for example, will embrace risk. Older people don't embrace risk. And so they're the toughest market to sell to. This is why in all advertising they always talk about the 18 to 34 age group. That's the one they want to go after because you're the ones who take the most risk. And so this is another challenge that you have to overcome. And this is why things like referrals and influencers are so powerful. Through all of this and decisions, the big thing that we see is that we act systematically. Regardless of the outcome, we see a problem, we look at solutions, we evaluate our options, we make a choice, and then based on the outcome of that choice, we feed back what we're going to do next time. And those options and everything else have to do with the marketing influence, that we want to set the perception of benefits. We want to tell you, here are your options, and steer you towards a certain preference. And so the last part of the decision spectrum is psychology theory. And I'll wrap up the rest of this lecture in the next video.